A lot of moving parts to the story, rising tensions along the Korean Peninsula. Let me turn to Brendan Mulvaney. He joins me for more analysis. He's the director of the China Aerospace Studies Institute and a former Marine who spent much of his career serving in Asia. Brendan, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
I want to begin with Mike Pence's trip to the region and some of the things we've heard from this administration. Like all options are on the table, an era of strategic patience is over. Does tone and rhetoric matter here?
I think it absolutely does, especially whenever we go to Asia and talk to our partners and allies and friends in the region. I think he's sending a very clear message that President Trump doesn't see the Obama administration's policies as having worked, and we're going to try something different, and he's there to tell both our adversaries and our allies exactly what that new policy is shaping up to be.
So what is the new policy, and how is it different from the previous administration? It seems, the past administrations have not been able to solve the DPRK issue, and certainly rhetoric and tone, will that solve the issue?
Certainly not alone. There's going to have to be some substance to it. This is the first early days of both the Trump administration and the new policy. So I think what the vice president's there to do is to reassure our allies, Japan, South Korea. He's going to go to Indonesia and Australia as well, and just discuss with them, hey, this is the new policy of the United States. This is the new outlook. We may not have all the details, but certainly what has not worked in the past, we're not going to continue to do, and we're looking for all options to be on the table, including diplomacy, it should be stated.
So why not try a completely different approach, Brendan? For example, what China has been saying all along. Let's stop the THAAD deployment. Let's stop the military drills and the deployment of U.S. warships to the region. And then at that point, maybe DPRK could be coaxed back to the negotiating table. Why not give that a try?
Well, I would say that is wholly dependent on the United States' action and gets absolutely nothing in return, increases no safety for anybody in the region, including China, it should be stated. And so what we need is something from the North Koreans. We need them to stop testing, we need them to dismantle their nuclear facilities, and we need them to come back to the negotiating table as well. So if both sides were completely able to stand down, I think that would be acceptable. That's not a realistic option at this point.
How concerned are you about what could happen if the next test DPRK conducts is not a failure?
Certainly any of the tests that they do, failure or not, are against both the United Nations resolutions and against the interests of everybody in the region. So I don't really care if it's a successful test or not. You learn just as much from your failures as you do from successes. So the testing needs to stop. Everybody in the region needs to work toward that goal.
What about concerns about a possible miscalculation or misunderstanding between the two sides where DPRK would mistakenly instigate something?
That's exactly, I think, what the vice president is there to try to avoid. We saw a good discussion between President Xi Jinping and President Trump, kind of laying out exactly what it is. We think that the Chinese, in this case, are probably the only good interlocutors we have with the DPRK, and I think that's exactly what the president and the vice president are trying to do, is to avoid any kind of miscalculation.
And finally, Brendan, what are the lessons that can be learned, that this administration can learn from previous administrations when it comes to DPRK?
Well, I think as it's been talked about quite a bit, the things that got us here have not been helpful. The DPRK has continued its nuclear development. It's continued its missile strikes, or not strikes, but development, regardless of what other administrations or neighboring countries have done. And so it's time to try something different.
All right, we'll leave it there. Brendan Mulvaney, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.